Hi, everyone. There's way more people than yesterday during rehearsal. My name is Max, and I'm a product manager at Datadog, and I'm excited to be here today to talk about security, everyone's favorite topic. So before we get started, I got a little sense earlier, but I want to know, show of hands, if anyone here identifies as working in tech. OK, cool. I'm sorry if someone didn't raise their hand. This is not the right place to be. DevOps, SREs, DevOps, show of hands. OK, quite a few folks. Security. Oh, OK, great. And then the rare DevSecOps person. That might be one. OK. Hi. So, it's very interesting to think about the DevOps journey, right? We went from yearly releases to daily, right? So once, it's quite simple, right? We talk about the pace of innovation, we talk about why we're doing this. It's really a competitive advantage, right? You innovate more rapidly, you bring more products to the market, you create value for your company, and everyone's happy. And so this, of course, didn't happen by itself, right? The environment and the way we work had to change drastically with this, right? From the different cloud providers, the technology, the way apps are built, the way they're shipped, the way they're observed, but also the skill sets of the different teams involved, right? And how we can do that, right? And so for security, this is the same thing. They cannot be blocking. They cannot say, stop everything you're doing, this has to be secure first. They have to adapt their practices and their processes to be part of this, right? And to be part of the trend. And so we see security, and when it comes to it, there's a clear challenge. We've seen it in the room. Maybe the room is a bit biased because this is an observability conference, but there are a few more dev and DevOps than security folks. And those people, they have a lot to cover. They have a lot of things to do with absolutely zero context, right? What does service so-and-so does? They don't know, and they should know. And then on the other end of the spectrum, we have DevOps, and we're badgering them with fixing thousands of vulnerabilities or issues that are relevant for them because they don't impact their system, or operators that have to build and manage security software that actually breaks their environment in production, and that's kind of complicated. And so if we look at this a bit more in details, I want to take the example of vulnerability management, and I'm going to start with a simple question. There are developers in the room. I've seen some hands. So what happens? What do you do when you see a vulnerability? Ooh, someone's saying fixing it. OK. Turn the screen off. That's right, exactly. You do nothing. And that makes sense because vulnerabilities come with a bunch of problems, right? The first thing we see is that this is the NVD database, so National Vulnerability Database. It's maintained by a US government agency. There is more than 200K vulnerabilities listed in there. More than half are high or critical, right? So if everything is a priority, nothing becomes a priority, and that makes it very hard to understand which one do I actually care about. And they're not doing anything wrong. Actually, the way they manage and rate vulnerabilities is that they have to account for the worst-case scenario, and so that makes it complicated for them. The second thing is, this is a great example, actually, from this person, Swedish, absolutely, maintainer of the curl utilities. There are about 3 of them, and they receive a report on HackerOne that there is a vulnerability in their system where actually it was just nonsense coming from generative AI submitted on HackerOne for them. So they have to deal with the reports, and they basically waste their time trying to figure out what actually happens. And so, of course, some bad stuff slips through the cracks. And the last piece is, I work in security. I've been working in security for a minute now, and I still see this kind of stuff, and I have no idea what this means. So please, if you know, find me, help me. Anyway, security is a very word with reports made for experts. And so talking to a bunch of you, a bunch of customers, a bunch of folks on the space, this is what we really hear from them. Is as a DevOps team, I'm a developer, I'm an operator, I don't want anyone else to tell me what to do. I want to own everything within my scope, right? And so the first thing I want to do is I want to prioritize the work I have to do. I want to understand if the vulnerability that I've seen has an impact on my system, if it's worth fixing it, if this is something I should do or not, if there is a risk, if there is anything happening. The second thing is, well, I want to integrate this with my workflows, right? Like, when do I need to be woken up at night, if ever? Do I need to do something today? Do I need to put it in the backlog and do it when I have time and when I like triage through these things? The last piece, the next piece, sorry, is really like DevOps team already have like a bunch of tools. They have like their processes in place, and if you add something on the side, like that's not working, right? Like the work needs to happen where the work happens, and so you cannot like put security aside. From the IDE to your production monitoring, right? Like this is where the work is done. And when you think about security, a lot of folks are talking about shifting lefts, which is great, but my question is, do you only fix bugs in your unit tests, right? Like this is really something you need to have, like bug tracking through the life cycle, and security is basically the same thing. And the last piece is, as we have SLOs, SLAs, like how do you improve over time? And really, like those folks like care about security, care about having like secure system, and they want to improve over time. Now, if we speak to a few friends that are in security here, really their job is the same, but across the entire organization, right? So they want to reduce the risks for the overall business. And how do they do that? Like very, very similar to SREs, like they can't do it themselves, right? Like they really need to have and to make the dev and operators owners of the security within their scope, right? And how do they do that? They need to empower them to succeed, and they really need to be available for them as experts when something happens, right? Like jumping an incident, help remediating something, help understanding that, like, what is this thing? While at the same time, focusing on new risks they want to tackle, like building more rules, expanding their coverage, really doing the thing that they don't have time to do today because they are just like busy chasing whether this vulnerability has been fixed or not. Something they want to focus on is, this is a lot of big words, mitigating gaps with compensating control, right? But basically what this means is that like there's compliance audits, there's a bunch of things happening, and the answer is not necessarily fixing. Patching a vulnerability is not always possible. Patching a security issue is not always possible. And so what do you put in place instead of that? Like sometimes you configure your WAF, you apply protection on the vulnerable endpoint, you do certain things so that like this problem cannot be exploited in real life. And the last piece, as usual, they want to improve, right? Like your security posture is what it is today, the risk of the business is what it is, but you always want to like get better and do better and across the entire organization. So, and so they want to manage that and set up the different policies to do that. And so really, like this is the same word, the same journey you have to take when you think about increasing your reliability, and it's a very big parallel with like SRE and DevOps, and like even the SRE guidebook from Google is a great read on that. Like, but all of this didn't happen in a day. The first thing you need to do is really start from understanding where you are today, and it cannot be like, here's the list of things you have to fix. There is 50,000 items in there. Tell me when you're done. Like this is really something collaborative to work between the development teams and the security teams. The second thing is similarly, like not everything needs to be 5.9 SLA. Not everything needs to be patched, right? Like so like the goal cannot be fix everything. Like what is the right acceptable risks for your organization, the specific service, etc. And the last piece is like the goals need to be aligned between the different teams. If security is pushing in that direction and the development teams are pushing in these other directions, like of course this is not going to work and the collaboration is not going to happen. And so I want to take a minute to show you these principles in action in the Datadog for security products. I'm going to show you a quick few slides. I'd be really happy to talk to you if you have some interest after this, right? The first one is really centralizing the assessment. So this is the service catalog. In Datadog, you can see all of your reliability, performance things you can do with Datadog. You can, like, in this case, look at all of the teams the services that are owned by this team and like the vulnerability, the presence of vulnerabilities or not, as well as the attack exposure, right? So it's really like for the teams themselves so they can focus on their scope, and then for the security team so they can understand kind of like the posture overall, right? The second thing, and this is one of my favorite things we do, is like we leverage both the observability context we have, as well as like the hundreds, ever-growing amount of integrations we have to update the severity of things we find. In this case, the vulnerability. And this example is great because it starts as a critical vulnerability. Critical vulnerability, I don't know what critical means in your world, but to me, critical means I need to stop what I'm doing and I need to go at it right now. However, this is not in a service that is exposed to attack. Yes, it's running in production, but there's no service exposed to attack. The world doesn't actually know how to exploit this vulnerability, so there is very little chance that an attacker is going to try to do this. And then the probability of exploitation is very low, right? And so all of this put together makes it that like this vulnerability does not need you to stop what you're doing and to go ahead and fix it. This is something you can do when you have the time, and you can prioritize later. And then, as I said earlier, you cannot always patch in the time you have to patch, right? If you need to patch within a day, this is not always possible. The patch might not even exist. Like this vulnerability might be there, but like there might not be an option. It might require an upgrade from a 2.0 to a 3.0, and that has a lot of breaking change, or like this specific repo and service on your organization might not be as well maintained as you'd want it to be, and there is no one that can actually do that. And so Datadog also offers option to protect directly within the platform your applications and APIs from attacks attempting to exploit those vulnerabilities. And so with that being said, I really have like 3 things to leave you with today. The first one is the only way for like the security initiatives to happen is to be empathetic, blameless, and communicative, right? Like it's really the same. You do blameless postmortem, or I hope you do. Like this is really the same idea. Like pointing fingers never helped anyone increasing a shared goal, right? Speaking of shared goals, this is what you got to do. Understand what each team is best at and focus on their expertise, right? And the last one, reduce the friction. If there is anything that adds any sort of friction to your security initiatives, to fixing a vulnerability, to whatever, people are going to look away. They're going to close their screen. They're going to ignore the Slack message. It needs to be done as part of your existing workflows, and it needs to be done like where people are looking at. That being said, happy to talk to all of you today, and thank you very much.